Why are we called Bnei Yisrael and not Bnei Avraham or Bnei Yitzhak? In what ways did Jacob succeed when Avraham and Isaac did not? When the patriarchal narratives begin in Parshat Lech Lecha, the stories are about the struggle of each patriarch and matriarch to develop his or her own way of walking with God. Avram was the first person to teach the idea there was only one God. Ironically, his father, Terach, made his living making and selling idols. In a midrash, an interpretation of the story, we find Avram in his father's shop. His father is away. Avram stages a riot among the idols, in which a large idol smashed others. When Terach returned and heard Avram's explanation for the mess, he immediately rejected it. After all, the idols aren't alive, he said. Avram responded, "Why worship the lifeless work of your own hands?" This is a fun midrash, but I wonder, in a place and a time where idol worship was the only item on the menu, from where did Avram get the idea to reject idols and proclaim there is only one God? And why does he leave everything he's known because he hears a God he can't see telling him to do so? In these verses, Avram seems to flick a switch and adapt an entirely new and radically different way of understanding the world. If he struggles with the idea, or even has an internal conversation or two, we do not know. That absence of process or even thought requires me, and I expect others, to make a huge leap in order to follow the faith of our father Avraham. Jacob's journey will be more clear and more transparent. It will be more accessible to us as a tool toward our own journeys of faith. Jacob was a stay-at-home and learn Torah kind of guy. His mother Rebekah, with whom he spent most of his time, had her own relationship with Adonai. It was formed during her painful pregnancy with the twins. In her distress, Rebekah called out to God, who responded and reassured her. Although we don't know whether Rebekah and Jacob shared conversation about her faith, we do know he was devoted to her and followed her advice. When Rebekah told him to leave home to avoid Esau's wrath, he did just that. What's interesting is Midrash tells us Jacob realized deep within himself it was time for him to leave to find his own path, as we all must do. He went out from Beersheba and his parents' village. He traveled toward Haran, ostensibly to find a wife from his mother's extended family. That going out was the beginning of his journey from Jacob to Israel. As he flees from his brother, he goes toward a place and people unknown to him. He is afraid. He is vulnerable. The sun has set and it is dark. He came upon a certain place and stopped there for the night. Taking one of the stones of that place, he put it under his head and lied down to sleep. He had a dream. A stairway was set on the ground. Its top reached to the sky, and angels of God were going up and down on it. In the dream, Yahweh was standing over and against him. "I am the God of Abraham your father, and the God of Isaac," God said. That's a little strange, because Yitzhak was Jacob's father, not Avraham. We'll discuss that another time. Jacob becomes the recipient of the same covenantal blessings his grandfather Avraham received. "The land on which you lie I give to you and to your seed. Your seed will be like the dust of the earth. All the clans of the soil will find blessing through you and your seed." When Jacob awoke, he was not the same person who had gone to sleep. His vision, his experience with God changed him. why God was in this place, and I did not know it. He was awestruck and inspired. He named the place Beit El, the house of God. Jacob's giving the place a name gave him ownership. It brought him closer to God. He knew he was destined to be the gateway between heaven and earth, between humankind and God. He would be the creator of a new nation. That nation would be called Bnei Yisrael. They also would be in a covenantal relationship with God. They and their descendants would be inheritors of the land. And then Jacob does a very human thing, surprising nonetheless. Having been the recipient of all those blessings, he simultaneously bargained with God. And Jacob vowed a vow, saying, "If God will be with me, and will watch over me on this way that I go, and will give me food to eat and a garment to wear, and if I come back in peace to my father's house, Yahweh will be God to me. And everything that you give me, I will tithe it to you." In Hebrew, we would say, Eze chutzpah. What kind of chutzpah this fellow has. On the other hand, Jacob was reflecting a feeling about God we also have had, probably many times. He felt afraid and vulnerable. Maybe instinctively he made an if-then deal, and only then he was able to move forward. Jacob's story is familiar to us. We have lived it. How many times have we found ourselves in a scary situation, wondering whether God is with us or not? We are Bnei Yisrael, because like Jacob, we are on journeys. We recognize and accept to one degree or another the obligations and the blessings of being a member of this biblical family. Jacob was chosen by God not for privilege, but to teach, to bring light into the world, and to lead others. We are Bnei Yisrael because it is our responsibility together to strive for peace and justice. Jacob's story is one of developing a mature religious conscience. That was integral to Jacob's journey, as it is to ours. In next week's Parsha, we will see Jacob fleeing again, this time from Lavan, his uncle. He was going to meet and hopefully reconcile with his brother Esau. He did not know what would happen. He divided his family and all his possessions into two parts, and he moved them, putting the river between his family and his brother. With the backdrop of nighttime, darkness, and vulnerability, Jacob had a second dream. An unnamed stranger came from an unknown place and wrestled with him until dawn. The one could not prevail against the other. It appears Jacob's thigh was injured, but he persevered. The unknown stranger, seeing dawn was breaking, said, "Let me go." Jacob replied, "I will not let you go unless you bless me." Said the other, "What is your name?" He replied, "Jacob." Then he said, "Not as Jacob, heel grabber, shall your name be henceforth uttered, but rather as Yisrael, God wrestler, for you have fought with God and men and have prevailed." Jacob named the place Panuel, of face of God, because he said, "I have seen God face to face, and my life has been saved." Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sacks of blessed memory powerfully noted, quote, "These decisive spiritual encounters of Jacob's life happened in liminal space, the space between what is neither a starting point nor a destination. It was at these points of maximal vulnerability that he encountered God and found the courage to continue, despite all the hazards of the journey. That is the strength and perseverance Jacob bequeathed the Jewish people, and that, I suggest, is why we are called B'nai Yisrael. When Rabbi Sachs became chief rabbi of Britain, he had to undergo a medical exam. The doctor put him on a treadmill, walking at a very brisk pace. "What are you testing?" he asked the doctor. "How far I can go, or how long?" "Neither," he replied. "What I am testing is how long it takes when you come off the treadmill for your pulse to return to normal." That, said Rabbi Sachs, is when I discovered that health is measured by the power of recovery. Vayetze, and Jacob went out. He embraced Yahweh. He actively participated in the process of building a people. He is the archetype of the Jewish people. We leave home, we find and follow our own journey, and we struggle with God, with our human vulnerabilities, and we persevere. His story is ours. It is an affirmation of the freedom of humankind to act in the world according to our sense of right and justice. Of all the figures in Genesis, Jacob is the great survivor, and we are his descendants. Shabbat Shalom.